The United States and China are going head-to-head in a fight to shape the narrative about the coronavirus's origins. As the blame game continues to escalate, it's worth taking a look back at how both countries have handled the outbreak. CNN's David Culver has more.
On December 31st, as the world rang in the new year, Chinese authorities in Wuhan were treating dozens of cases of a severe pneumonia of unknown origin. At the time, there was still no evidence of human-to-human spread. In Wuhan, Dr. Li Wenliang warned friends about the threat of a new virus. At the time, police reprimanded him for spreading rumors. Less than a week later, Chinese authorities confirmed they had identified the virus as a novel coronavirus. On January 11th, Wuhan's Health Commission reported the first known death. Chinese officials had evidence of clusters suggesting human-to-human transmission as early as January 14th, according to a new Associated Press report based on leaked internal documents. On January 16th, as the impeachment trial of President Trump began in the Senate, Japanese authorities confirmed a man who had traveled to Wuhan was infected with the virus. Wuhan health officials continued to downplay the danger of how quickly the virus could spread. The contagion of the novel coronavirus is not high. The risk of sustained human-to-human transmission is low. With the implement of our prevent and control measures, the epidemic is preventable and controllable. By January 20th, China had reported 139 new cases and 3 deaths, and Beijing acknowledged the virus was spreading from person to person. The very next day, the U.S. saw its first confirmed case of COVID-19 in a Washington state man who had recently returned home from a trip to Wuhan, China. On January 23rd, Chinese authorities closed the city of Wuhan, with its population of more than 11 million people, to the outside world. By the end of January, 6 days later, President Trump announced the creation of a task force to monitor and contain the spread of the virus. The United States saw its first confirmed case of person-to-person transmission on January 30th, and the World Health Organization declared an international public health emergency.
Now we're working very strongly with China on the coronavirus. That's a new thing that a lot of people are talking about. Hopefully it won't be as bad as some people think it could be.
A day later, the Trump administration announced the U.S. would deny entry to foreign nationals who had traveled to China in the last 14 days. CNN spoke by phone with whistleblower Dr. Li Wenliang. He had contracted the virus after being silenced by authorities and returning to work. On February 3rd, as the Iowa caucuses posed the first big test for the Democratic presidential candidates, the war of words between China and the U.S. began. China's foreign ministry accused the U.S. government of inappropriately reacting to the outbreak, saying, quote, that the U.S. is turning from overconfidence to fear and overreaction. On February 7th, Dr. Li Wenliang died of the coronavirus. After that news broke, topics like Wuhan government owes Dr. Li Wenliang an apology and we want freedom of speech trended on China's highly censored Twitter-like platform Weibo before disappearing. That same day, President Trump said his relationship with Chinese President Xi Jinping was in great shape.
You know, we're working on the problem, the virus. It's a very tough situation, but I think he's going to handle it. I think he's handled it really well. We're helping wherever we can. But we have a great relationship. It's incredible.
On February 10th, President Trump claimed that as the weather started to warm up, the virus would go away.
The virus. They're working hard. Looks like by April, you know, in theory, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. I hope that's true. But we're doing great in our country. China, I spoke with President Xi, and they're working very, very hard. And I think it's going to all work out fine.
As Democratic voters in New Hampshire were casting their ballots in the presidential primary, the World Health Organization named the disease caused by the virus COVID-19. Throughout the month of February, news of increased cases poured in around the globe, and the U.S. saw its first case of community-spread transmission. On February 28th, at a rally in South Carolina, the president lashed out at Democrats.
Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. They tried the impeachment hoax. That was on a perfect conversation. They tried anything. They tried it over and over. And this is their new hoax.
And that very same day,
we did something very fortunate. We closed up to certain areas of the world very, very early, far earlier than we were supposed to. And we only have 15 people, and they're getting better, and hopefully they're all better soon.
March 11th marked a turning point for the U.S. Actor Tom Hanks announced he and his wife had contracted COVID-19 in Australia. Hours later, the NBA suspended its season after a player tested positive moments before a game. And the WHO declared the outbreak a pandemic. At this point, leagues, companies, and states began the process of telling Americans to stay home. The economy and stock market began a fast trek to historic losses. After President Trump repeatedly praised China's response to the coronavirus, on March 19th, Chinese officials reported no new locally transmitted coronavirus cases for the first time since the pandemic began, touting success in controlling the outbreak despite widespread skepticism over the transparency of their reporting. And on that very same day, as the number of cases and the death toll continued to rise in the U.S., President Trump suggested China should have been more transparent.
Well, it would have been much better if we had known about this a number of months earlier. It could have been contained to that one area in China where it started. And certainly the world is paying a big price for what they did, and the world is paying a very big price for not letting them come out. Everybody knows that. We all know that.
Throughout the month of March, the number of COVID-19 cases continued to rise in the United States. And on March 30th, the president said this.
Nobody could have predicted something like this.
But the White House economic advisor did warn the president about the threat of the virus back in January. By April 2nd, the pandemic had infected more than 1 million people in 180 countries and regions, killing more than 51,000. And on April 8th, just over a week ago, China lifted the 76-day lockdown in Wuhan.
David Culver joins us now from Shanghai. Certainly a lot of distrust, as you laid out. You're getting new information, I understand, about the revised death toll out of Wuhan.
Well, Anderson, you know that we have placed increasing skepticism on the numbers that we have been seeing here, and this dates back to our early reporting. I mean, you saw that timeline that we laid out there, and some of the early stories that we were hearing from folks within Wuhan who suggested to us that testing of their loved ones was either being delayed or just not happening at all, told us that the numbers aren't adding up because people were passing away and that they were being told by their doctors that they had died from a severe pneumonia, or some were pulled aside and said it was that pneumonia, but they didn't test them and they couldn't hence count them towards the total number. So we knew the numbers weren't adding up. As of today, we know that the Wuhan city health officials have changed the way that they are incorporating some of these folks who passed away prior. They've enhanced it by some 50%. That's the number that they added. Now, the president of the U.S., I was looking down at his tweet just a short time ago. He said that they doubled the numbers, China as a whole. That's not the case. What happened was within the city of Wuhan in particular, it went up 50%. The revising of those numbers, though, I mean, it comes after increasing skepticism from the global community. However, China's pushing back, saying they're doing it as a testament to their people so that history is left properly documented.
All right, David Culver. David, thanks very much. Appreciate it.